In this refresh episode, aggression in my 240-gallon African cichlid tank. Lymphocystis rears its ugly head, again, making a strip light diffuser, ghetto style. And feeding mentally and physically challenged fish. Should be exciting, but have a pillow ready, just in case. Let's kick this thing off with some irritating aggression going on in Alcatraz. Of all my fish in the tank, I'd like to talk about the protagonist of the story first, and then I'll get to the antagonist, the troublemaker. So here's the good guy. He goes by the name Keanu Reeves because he's a sexy fish with a great personality. At least that's what the ladies say. And you have to admit he's a pretty seriously good-looking hab. The blue is almost electric. The full scientific name for this type of fish is actually Chilatilapia rhodesii, but most people just call him roadies, much easier and simpler to remember. So yeah, he's a very beautiful fish in my opinion, with that nearly electric blue all across his body, and he has a unique shape for a hab too, with a slightly rounded head. In case you don't know, Alcatraz is full of habs. No peacocks anymore. Been there, done that, didn't like it. All my peacocks were always troublemakers of the highest order. And these haps like Keanu are a lot easier to get along with in the confines of their 8-foot-long, high-security prison. So he's good-looking, fine, but what else makes him so cool? Well, see this guy here? This is Blind Bart. He's a Dimidiochromis strigatus, or sunset hap, or a-hole hap. He's absolutely stunningly gorgeous, but he thinks he's the boss of this tank. And he really is. His handicap, though, only one functioning eye, keeps him from being a really huge threat, at least for now. But yesterday he had everyone corralled to one side of the tank, and I hate it when that kind of thing happens. So he had 120 gallons all to himself, and all the others had to share the other 120. So I'm thinking, not this again. And right after my Peace in Alcatraz video too. Keanu is a pretty peaceful fish. I mean, he's still an African cichlid, so he'll do a little chasing around, and he is one of the larger inmates at about 8 inches or so, but he doesn't ever do anything terrible, and he doesn't do it all the time. But even though I didn't see any real face-offs between Blind Bart and Keanu, he did keep venturing over into Bartland to let my evil strigatus know that he wasn't all that afraid of him. See this mound of sand on the right side of the tank? Well, that's from my water change, where the water poured back into the tank. And then see this mound of sand on the other side? Well, that's Blind Bart's fortress he made. Just over there moving sand around and being a dick to everyone else. I didn't get a lot of footage of it because the window reflections were insane during the worst part of it, and I was watching football too. Yeah, I like football again, and it's vital that I watch the games. But the whole episode lasted about 4 or 5 hours, and then around dinner time, all back to normal. The next morning though, still going on. And if you recall in my last video, I rescaped part of the tank, adding more aqua decor rocks, and as you know, changing things up in the tank can cause something like this. It's funny, it can either help with aggression or it can do the complete opposite. So we'll see if that works, and hopefully it does because I like Blind Bart, and I want him to stay, but I won't put up with it for long. And I like that Keanu's a pretty boy, and at least not 100% afraid of Blind Bart, just maybe 50% afraid. Speaking of being afraid, disease in your tanks is always something to fear. We do our best to keep aquarium living conditions as healthy as we can, but sometimes things happen beyond our control. And Lymphocystis is one of those diseases that just pops up out of nowhere. I've dealt with it a few times with my fish, and most notably with Gary, my venustus, who had it so bad in his mouth that he couldn't even eat anymore. And my tanks have been free of it for several months now. But now here it is again on the dorsal fin of Victor, my VC10. See the pink bump about halfway down the fin? They get these pink tumors on their bodies, fins and mouths. And it's a disease that isn't really well understood either, but some sources say that it isn't contagious and will go away sometimes on its own. Other sources indicate that it can be transmitted through touch, and in my experience, once one fish gets it, it won't be long before another one does too. And I've never had it go away on its own, and it's a viral disease, so there's no treatment for it. Why do they get it? Well, like most diseases, maybe it's because of stress, but who knows. So I'll be moving Victor over to a 20-gallon hospital tank, one that I just took down last week. I was like, finally some open spots in my bedroom where we can actually see the tops of our dressers, but it's going back. My hopes are high, but realistically, he probably won't make it from my experience. I'll be doing frequent water changes to keep the water pristine, but he can't stay in a 20-gallon tank indefinitely. Way too small, and that would be cruel. But I can't keep a fish infected with disease in Alcatraz and risk others getting it too. Let me know in the comments if you have any experience with this insidious disease. I bought this 4-foot Fluval Sea Marine 3.0 strip light a few weeks ago, and it's a great light, except for one thing. Disco ball effect. These light strips have all these colored LEDs that cause some issues. Disco ball effect is what you call it when those LEDs cast colored spots in the bottom of your aquarium. Super lame and annoying. But fortunately, there's an easy fix. My AI primes did the same thing. I just had to fork out some more money for diffusers because the lights weren't already way too expensive, and those spots disappeared. But I don't even think they make diffusers for these strip lights, and I don't want to spend the money anyway, so I'm going cheap. Ghetto style, if you will. No offense if you live in the ghetto. I've already done this to my other strip light on San Quentin, and it worked great. So let's get my diffuser supplies out. Parchment paper. That's it. Cutting a nice little strip, and taping it to the bottom side of the light with some electrical tape. Remember that high-tech guy Dan I was talking about? Well, I'm the opposite of him. But it works. Look, no more disco ball. That's great. My lights don't even get slightly warm, but this parchment paper is fine in ovens up to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm not worried about it catching on fire. However, if you do this and your house burns down to a pile of ashes, I feel sorry for you, but it's not my fault. Just want to make that perfectly clear. But if mine does catch on fire, at least my house is almost 100% made of aquarium water. I'm sure that feeding your own fish is one of your favorite parts about having them. And if you have cichlids, then probably doubly so. They love to eat more than any fish I've ever owned, especially the Africans, but also the Central American and South Americans. My fish are pretty much all good eaters too, and by that I mean they know what food is, and they can actually recognize it and go for it when I drop it in the tank. And unless they're afraid of the other fish, they really attack it like they haven't eaten in days, even though I feed them once or twice per day. This is easy stuff, right? Well, not for some fish. If we go back to way over a year ago, I had this guy in Alcatraz. He's since passed, but he was what you might call a mentally and physically challenged fish, especially in relation to food. He just seemed like a dumbass, and he was slow, but it was okay because he was so cute about it. I'd have to hand feed him some huge pellets so he was sure to get enough food, and lots of times he'd miss it and think he got it and then just swim away, or another fish would come by and snag it up if it floated next to him because he was just too slow to go for it. He was a fur cicada named Ferk II, very endearing fish. Now I have the smaller version that goes by Ferk II in his honor. Still has a lot of growing to do. He's much more with it though, and he's practically always sifting sand, getting what all the other inmates left behind. I actually don't think they left anything behind, but he does. So let's switch gears and head over to San Quentin, wherein lies another special needs fish. And just as Ferk II was one of my favorites, and probably yours as well if you followed my channel for a while, Buck the true parrot is challenged when it comes to supper time, and he's also one of my favorites. He's really slow at gobbling up the smaller north fin pellets I feed everyone else, and many times he doesn't even go for it. He just stares at the top of the tank, and that's partly my fault. You see, I hand feed him the bigger pellets too, and now he figures, I'll just wait for the good stuff. But the problem is that if I drop it by him, he'll probably be too slow and Percy will come by and grab it just like this. Percy is the best, quickest, and smartest eater in the yard, so it makes it challenging for me. And when I leave it in my fingers and let him take it, half the time he just misses it, but he still gets enough of it that it falls out of my fingers, and then Percy gets that one too. So here's the plan I drew up to make sure Buck gets enough food. I open 2 lids to the tank, and then I put on a show. I act like I'm going to drop the big pellet on one side to lure the other buffoons over there, and then I real quick drop it in front of Buck. Works almost every time too, but not every time. And now I started feeding him huge night crawlers. They seem too big for him, but he eats them just fine, believe me. Oh, and there's that damn Percy again. This could be a problem because that worm is way too big for him, but I bet he can still choke it down. Oh, look, Buck doesn't like that he missed it. I think he's going to go after it, and I hope he can manage to steal it away even though he's so slow. And he got it! And down it goes, just like I said. You didn't believe me, did you? So do you have any special needs fish in your tank? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, thanks for watching. Peace out.